Hello my lovely bookish friends and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you my February wrap up, so all the books that I read last month. And actually I ended up having a really good reading month last month. So let me show you the books.
First up we have Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This follows the story of Elizabeth, who has been raised in one of the great libraries, a place filled with magical grimoires. When the library's most dangerous grimoire is released, Elizabeth is blamed, and with no one to turn to but her sworn enemy, the sorcerer Nathaniel Fawn, she finds herself entangled up in a centuries-old conspiracy. This was a reread. I love this book, it's one of my all-time favourites, and I wanted to refresh myself of it before reading the sequel novella, Mysteries of Fawn Manor, which was released back in January. I'm not going to give you the blurb for the novella as I think it'll give away part of the plot for the first book, but honestly I cannot recommend these two books enough. It's magical libraries, demon cat butlers, magic books, howl-like male lead and swords. All the things I love thrown into one. If you're looking for some magical fun, then this is the book to read. Next up we have by Ash, Oak and Fawn. This is a middle grade book that follows three tiny ancient beings, once revered guardians of the wild world, who wake up from winter hibernation in their beloved ash tree home, only for it to be destroyed. They set off on an adventure to find more of their kind, a journey which takes them first into the deep countryside and then into the heart of the city. Helped along the way by birds and animals, the trio search for a way to survive and thrive in a precious yet disappearing world. I listened to this book as an audiobook, which I highly recommend as the narrator does a fabulous job and the whole production of the audiobook with background music and sound effects is wonderful. And despite this being a middle grade book, it really touched me. This book beautifully captures the issues of global warming and the human effects on the natural world and the damage that has been caused, and perhaps it touched me more as an adult because I could read between the lines and the wilder issues that the book touches on that a child might not. It was a delightful read and I really want to read the next book in the series and find out what happens next. Next up we have Beauty and the Beast. This version is the English translation of what is considered to be the first novelised version of this fairy tale. Now, this is the novel version, so it is much longer than the story most of us know. However, this version is actually believed to have come first and be the original. Obviously, the Beauty and the Beast story is one that turns up in many different forms around the world, but this is the one that became the basis of the shorter edition, the condensed version, that, led to the Disney movie. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, because this is the original, I wanted to give it a go, and it was a fun fairy tale read. However, because it's a classic, it wasn't necessarily an easy read. I can see why the story got condensed, as this one goes on a bit and there's this whole secret behind Belle's birth, wars between kingdoms, fairies going off at each other and seducing princesses. It's like, it all kicks off. It's a bit weird, but if you like fairy tales, then it's well worth the read. However, I think I'll probably stick to the Disney version. Another middle grade book next, and it is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. I am just going to read you the blurb for this one, and it goes, Morgan Crow is cursed, destined to die on her 11th birthday. But as the clock strikes midnight, she is whisked away by a remarkable man called Jupiter North and taken to the secret city of Nevermore. There she is invited to join the Wondrous Society. Mystery, magical and protection are all hers, if she can pass 4 impossible trials using an exceptional talent, which she doesn't have. I also listened to the second book in this series as an audiobook, but I won't give you the blurb for that one as it will give everything away. I love this series. It is so much fun. The characters are delightful, and actually, to say it's a middle grade book, some of the topics are quite dark, especially in the second book. I highly recommend the audiobook again for this one. The narrator is brilliant and it really brings the world to life. I cannot wait to read the next book in this series, and I believe the 4th one comes out later this year, so I should be definitely giving that a read when it comes out. Next up we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. This follows the story of Addie, A woman who makes a deal with an old god to live forever, but she is tricked. Even though she has a prolonged life, no one remembers her, and she cannot say her own name. That is a very basic blurb, but I feel like saying much more will give away the plot. Anyway, I enjoyed this book more than I thought I would. Once I'd gotten into the story, I was hooked. Actually, I have a blog where I talk about this book more, so I'll link that above so you can check out more detailed what I thought. Especially any of you who have actually read the book, as I give my opinions on the ending there a little bit more. Like, I didn't hate it or anything, it wasn't my preferred ending for the novel. Okay, this next book is a novel that I know is going to make it onto my favourites list for this year. It was incredible, and it is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. This book is set in Syria during the revolution and refugee crisis, and it follows two teenagers as they struggle with the decision of leaving their homeland behind. There is a lot more to the book than that, but honestly I believe this is a book you should just experience for yourself. Despite being a YA book, this story gets graphic and heavy and real from the off, and because we know that whilst the characters are fictional, the events are real, that only makes it harder to read at times. I was in tears by chapter 6, and the only other book that I've ever cried at was The Book Thief, so it was a big deal. I also only read this book in the mornings, as I'm the type of person who gets things stuck in their heads and ends up having nightmares. So like, I cannot read the news in the evening, otherwise, I mean, unless it's an emergency, because otherwise, you know, the news, what was in the news will turn up in my dreams. I'm that kind of person. However, do not let that put you off reading this book, because it's just, there's so much love and life and beauty in this book. It is truly an incredible read. And also, this book contains literally one of the most adorable couples I have ever read. I love them, and he is goals. He wants to work for Studio Ghibli. He's just a walking green flag. I love him, and also her, so much. I have a reading vlog on this book, which I fangirl over it more in, if you would like to look at that. But for now, I'm just going to say, you know, read this book. It'll hurt, but it is utterly amazing. A complete change up now, we have a manga, and it is A Saviour's Book Cafe in Another World. Our lead girl is swept up into another world in which she is supposed to be the saviour and the chosen one who will save the day. However, she's just not that interested in any of that, so she sets up a magical book cafe instead, and the story goes off from there. This manga is so cute and wholesome, and I want a magical book cafe. I also really like this idea of having an older lead. So our main girl is in her mid-30s, which obviously isn't old, but compared to the usual teenage heroines, she is older, and this is part of the reasons why she's not interested in being a hero. You know, she's got a life, she's quite happy with a book cafe. And you know what, it's just really fun, and I really want to check out the other volumes as it's just so wholesome. Lastly, we have a book that I have not yet finished, and that is Misakis World by Susan Napier. This is a non-fiction book, and it's all about the creative world of Misaki, who is the genius behind Studio Ghibli, which is the Japanese animation studio behind the films such as Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Totoro, and so on. Now, I haven't finished this book yet, so I cannot give a detailed opinion on it, but so far it's really interesting, and I'm fully engaged in this book, which is usually my problem with non-fiction. Perhaps it's because I'm really interested in Studio Ghibli, as I love the films, so learning more about the filmmaker behind them is just fascinating, and I cannot wait to read more.
So that was it for all the books that I read in February, and honestly I felt like I've done a personal record for myself with the number of books that I managed to read last month. It was like 10 books, and yeah, I normally don't read that much, but I think because I read quite a lot of middle grade, which was shorter, and because I listened to a lot of audiobooks last month, it really helped me boost up my reading. And it's really cool actually listening to audiobooks of middle grade stories, as they're just so much fun, and the narrators are obviously really going for it and doing all the character voices, and really like it's just a lot of fun to listen to. And I'm definitely going to start listening to some more audiobooks this year, and really sort of dive into audiobooks. I'm really enjoying I'm just really enjoying listening to them. So And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing, as we have a lot more bookish content to come. So, until next time, my lovely bookish friends, goodbye!